Overfunctioning is when you consistently take on more responsibility than what is yours to carry. I know you feel like you're coaching, but that's not coaching, it's caretaking. What it actually looks like to stop. Not to stop caring, it's never about that, but to stop carrying, because those two things are not the same. I want to start today's episode with something that might feel a little uncomfortable. And I say that because it was uncomfortable for me when I first saw it in myself. Here it is. There's a version of being a coach, a service provider, a mentor, a CEO that looks like from the outside, you're deeply committed, you're so professional, you're excellent at what you do. But on the inside, it's absolutely exhausting. It feels like you're holding everything together with your bare hands, like the world is hanging on your shoulders. Like if you stop pushing, stop checking, stop anticipating, something's going to fall apart. Now, that is not dedication. That is overfunctioning. And today we are naming it because you cannot change something that you have not named yet. Welcome to the High Ticket Portal. My name is Vanessa Carling, and this is the first episode in a brand new 3-part series I'm calling The Cost of Carrying Everyone. This is a series I have been wanting to make for a while. And honestly, a series I needed for myself before I could make it for you. So let's get into it. First, let me tell you what overfunctioning actually is. Because I think we throw around words like people-pleasing, codependency, and burnout. And sometimes those words just lose their weight. So I want to be really specific. Overfunctioning is when you consistently take on more responsibility than what is yours to carry. It's doing for others what they are capable of doing or need to do for themselves. And it comes from a place that feels like care, it feels like love, it can feel like professionalism. But underneath, at the root level, it's anxiety. It's a nervous system that learned if I do enough, if I manage enough, if I control enough, I will be safe. You're not overfunctioning because you're a bad coach or a bad leader. You're overfunctioning because at some point in your life, that strategy kept you safe. We'll get into the why, the deeper root of where this is coming from in part 2 of the series. But today I want to focus on what it actually looks like in a high-ticket business because it's sneaky and it wears really good disguises. So let me walk you through the ways overfunctioning shows up. And as I do, I want you to notice what lands. What makes you exhale a little, make you go, oh, that's me. The first way it shows up is that you take responsibility for your client's results. Now, I need to be careful here because there's a version of that is right and healthy. You should care about your client's outcomes. You should show up fully in your delivery. You should have a program or a container that actually works. But here's the line, and overfunctioners cross it all the time. When a client doesn't implement, you work harder. When a client isn't progressing, you add more calls, more resources, more check-ins, not because your program is lacking, but because somewhere in you, their lack of progress feels like you're failing. You lie awake thinking about the client who didn't do the work. You feel personally responsible when someone doesn't get the result, even when you know logically that you gave them everything they needed to succeed. I have been there. So let me walk you through the ways overfunctioning shows up. And as I do, I want you to notice what lands. What makes you exhale a little? What makes you go, oh, that's me? So the first way it shows up is you take responsibility for your client's results. Now, I need to be careful here because there's a version of this that is right and it's healthy. You should care about your client's outcomes. You should show up fully in your delivery. You should have a program or container that actually works. But there is a line, and overfunctioners cross it. When a client doesn't implement, you work harder. When a client isn't progressing, you add more calls, more resources, more check-ins, not because your program is lacking in any way, but because somewhere in you, their lack of progress feels like your failure. You lie awake thinking about the client who didn't do the work. You feel personally responsible when someone doesn't get the result, even when you know logically that you gave them everything they needed. The second way it shows up is that you manage your clients' emotions. You monitor how they feel. You notice when someone goes quiet in a group chat and you feel a low grade anxiety until they respond. You soften your feedback, dilute your truth, or even over explain your decisions because you are managing their emotional experience in advance. You send check in messages not because you genuinely had the impulse to connect, but because silence from a client creates a kind of dread in you and you need to fill it. You spend more energy thinking about how a client is feeling rather than thinking about their own growth. I know you feel like you're coaching, but that's not coaching, it's caretaking. And I want to say this gently because I know how much you care. But caretaking is not the same as holding space. We will get into the difference in part 3 of this series, but for now, notice if this resonates. Now, the third way overfunctioning shows up in a high ticket business, you micromanage the delivery. Everything has to be perfect before it goes out. Every module is reviewed one more time. Every email is rewritten, every call is agonized over, not from a place of pride in your work, but from a place of, if anything goes wrong, it's my fault. And if you have a team, it gets really interesting. Maybe you delegate, but actually you don't really. You either hover over their work, you redo it yourself, you spend more time explaining your instructions than it would have taken to do it yourself. Because the overfunctioner cannot fully trust that things will be okay without them. Now, the fourth sign, and this one is quieter, but it's really important. You over-deliver from anxiety, not generosity. On the surface, these look identical. Generous over-delivery and anxious over-delivery both result in clients getting more than they paid for. But one comes from a full cup, from genuinely wanting to give because giving feels good, and the other comes from an empty one. I need to do more. I need to add more. I need to be more so that this person doesn't leave feeling like they didn't get enough, so that they don't ask for a refund, so they don't say, this wasn't good enough for me. Now, if you've ever added a bonus to your program right before a client's renewal, not because you plan to, but because you were kind of nervous, that's anxious over delivery. That's overfunctioning. Now, the fifth one, the one that really gets people, when I say it out loud, you find it genuinely hard to let a client struggle, not fail, not suffer, productive struggle, the kind that produces growth, that makes you a little bit uncomfortable. So you jump in too soon, you rescue, you hand them the answers before they've even had a chance to find them themselves. And in doing so, you're actually slowing down their growth because the muscle they're about to build, they're not able to build it because you're picking up all the weight for them. Okay, I want to take a moment here because I know some of you are listening to this and maybe you're feeling a little bit exposed. Maybe you're thinking about past clients that you've had where you've done some of these things. Maybe you're even feeling a little bit defensive. And that's completely okay because overfunctioning doesn't make you a bad coach, a bad leader, or a bad CEO. It doesn't make you unprofessional. It doesn't mean that your clients aren't getting incredible value. If anything, they're getting too much. It just means that the way you are currently delivering that value is costing you more than it should. It means there's a version of you who shows up just as powerfully, maybe more powerfully, without carrying all of the weight. And it means that something underneath the surface is kind of running the show. It's something that was learned. It's something that once made completely sense and something that you absolutely have the capacity to shift. Okay, let me tell you something that I've noticed about overfunctioners, specifically in the high ticket business. The higher the ticket, the more intense the overfunctioning can get because the stakes feel higher, because you feel more responsible. Because when someone's paid you $10, $20, $30,000, the pressure to make sure that they get the results can become almost unbearable. And here's the cruel irony. Overfunctioning actually gets in the way of your client's results. When you're so focused on managing their experience, their emotions, their progress, their satisfaction, you stop being able to see them clearly. You stop being able to give them the honest truth that they actually need. You become so invested in their okayness that you cannot challenge them properly. You cannot hold the line. You can't say, I see you avoiding this. I see you making excuses. Let's talk about that. The best coaches I know are not the ones who care the most. They're the ones who can care deeply and still let their clients do the hard work. That's the difference between a coach and a caretaker. So here's what I want to leave you with today as we close out part 1 of this series. I want you to sit with one question this week, not to judge yourself, not to spiral, not to go down some crazy self-judgmental valley, just to notice. And the question is, where in my business am I working harder than my clients are? Where are you putting in more efforts than the person you're supposedly serving? Where are you more invested in their outcome than they are? Where are you doing things for them that they need to do for themselves? Just notice. Just notice what comes up. Write it down if that helps. Because awareness, real, honest, unflinching awareness, that crispy, sharp awareness, that clarity, that's always the first step. So in part 2 of this series, we're going to go deep into why. We're going to look at where overfunctioning actually comes from, the nervous system roots, the childhood patterns, the stories that you took on that said, my job is to manage everyone and all of their experiences, and why that wiring was genius at some point, but it's now costing you everything. And in part 3, we're going to talk about that, plus what it actually looks like to stop. Not to stop caring, it's never about that, but to stop carrying, because those two things are not the same. If this episode hit something in you, I would love to hear from you. Come and find me on Instagram, the link is in the show notes, and tell me which part of this landed in you. The more specific you can be, the better. It's because of this community of women that I know what to do next. And if you're ready to do this work on a deeper level, if you know this patterning is showing up in you and your business, and you want support in unwiring it, then definitely listen to the rest of the episodes. So thank you so much. I'll see you in part 2. Take care of yourself this week. And maybe just for practice, just do this for practice. Let someone else take care of themselves too. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.